Introducing Richard Huck Planas, 8th degree master of Kenpo Karate. As a true first-generation student of Ed Parker's, Huck trained at Master Parker's Pasadena School in the late 60s, and as a black belt, he managed and taught at the Pasadena School until 1975. Huck served for over 10 years as the executive vice president of the International Kenpo Karate Association until Master Parker's death. Huck Planas teaches not only the how-to, but the why, based on the rules and principles of the Kenpo system. As Master Parker said, he who knows how will be the student. He who knows why will be the instructor. Huck Planas is available for seminars internationally. For booking information and information on other RVF videos, call 1-800-356-VIDEO.
Hello, I'm Richard Planas. In this tape, we're going to get right into the self-defense techniques in application of all of the rules and principles and the concepts that we talked about earlier in the previous tapes. We'll be working at the beginner level, basically through the yellow belt or some of the yellow belt requirements. I say that because a lot of the schools that I travel to around the country, everybody teaches basically a little bit different curriculum, and not everybody's yellow belt techniques or requirements are the same. So I'm just going to hit some of the ones that are standard or fairly well standard and point out again the rules and principles that apply, and then we'll get into some of the advanced techniques and show you some of what we call like family group techniques to point out that what we always say, there's not a few hundred techniques, but a handful of techniques and a whole bunch of variations. So we'll get right into the techniques. Okay, now when we get into the techniques, again, we're talking about our rules and principles. And most of our yellow belt material, excuse me, we're inside the person's center line. So we bring in the rule there of canceling the height zone, remember, because of the backup weapons. So I'm going to bring Rick in here to go over this. Now, when he comes in, remember, with the right punch, and we drop back, that we're inside the center line, and he has this backup weapon, and it's guaranteed it's going to come if we don't do something to prevent that from happening. Remember, we're basically in a position that we don't really want to be in. See, so the rule is to break the height zone. Now let me explain a little bit something about this technique first. There's an old technique which we used to call inward defense that worked, again, it was a flow, but people want to go fast. Too fast, and a beginner wound up backing away from the strike. Now what I mean by that, just come in here, Rick, and stand here. You learn when you go to a tournament that you cannot score in reverse, so I cannot back away from my strikes, see, because I'm just nullifying all my backup mass and my power. So the technique came, I want you to step in good with this, right? When he came in with the punch that we blocked, we went to the chop, and then we cat, kick, and did a step through to get out of there. So we went block, chop, cat, kick, and cover out. So that's basically all in reverse. We're going block, chop, and you caught the students backing away from their strikes and everything coming on the way out. So we said, let's do something to nullify this or change that and make them use their body mechanics. So we decided to delay the chop with the kick and then put the kick in first and make the student move forward and gain some power with backup mass and marriage with gravity. So again, so now when we work the right punch, we move back with the block, we go to the kick, and then come in with the chop. Now when we do this, we make sure that we check the knee to close our center line. See, again, based on the two ways the opponent hits you, if I open my center line and hit, he might move back, and the foot come up accidentally and catch me in center line. So we're always thinking about that two ways that you're going to be hit, the intentional or the unintentional. Now, I don't know if I pointed this out earlier when we went through the block section, but we kill as many birds with one stone as possible. So Rick, when you throw the punch, we're not just blocking. We never do one thing if we can do two. So we're saying I didn't just block, I cocked my hand to strike. So just like if I was standing here and going to do an outward chop, I would have to cock my hand to hit. Just like being on a horse and going cock, strike, cock, strike. See, I have to put my hand to the cocked position, and that is the block, getting to the position. So this is one of the reasons that why I point out that we don't use the vertical outward as a block, because it does not follow that rule of blocking and cocking at the same time. Like if he threw the right punch again, and from here so you can see it, if I went vertical outward as one, then I was, okay, now let's cock it as an extra move and then into my chop. So it would give me that 3 count or the extra move. So you block in to strike out, you block out to strike in, and that eliminates the extra move. And that would bring us to the technique, come on this side now, Rick, for a left. If the left punch is coming in, we use the extended out. We're coming deep, we make the block, and our cover on our center line, the same thing. That hand is going to be coming unless we do something about it. So again, we break the center line and then come in with our chop for the final shot as far as the base move. So you notice, again, see, these are yellow belt techniques. They're just like when you go to school, you learn how to spell. You went C-A-T, cat, B-A-T, bat. Okay, you're 1, 2, 3s, and that's what we're doing. Then you added a letter, C-O-A-T, coat, B-O-A-T, boat. See, so we just keep adding a letter or a move, and this is what makes the difference from a yellow belt technique to a brown or black belt technique. The techniques are really basically the same, it's just how much meat there is to understand in the technique. Okay, so we went, again, review these two. The right punch comes in, that we block in to strike out, and the left punch comes in, we blocked out to strike in, again, to just reverse your lines. I still catch a lot of beginners of going block in, recock, and chop in. And that gives you that reverse line, that extra move that we want to get rid of. See? So this is the principle. It's not only blocking, but you're cocking and teaching you or learning how to reverse your lines. Okay, now another thing I want to mention here is the different types of checks, and that's what we call pinning and positional checks. I'll bring Rick in again. If he's forward with his right leg, just put your right leg forward, Rick. After our kick to the groin, I don't want to just step down here and expose my center line, again, based on the two ways we can be hit. My line of force could knock Rick back, and that would unload his front foot, and it could come up in my center line. So I have to go, if his right leg is forward, what we call a pinning check. So when the kick comes in, we come in, I have a downward pressure, and I'm on top of his right leg. That's because the leg is forward. Now, when he comes in with the left, and we're in, go put your punch up, Rick. Okay, and the left is up. Again, I don't want to check now his front leg because that will open my line. So I wouldn't kick and then step around, and I get this a lot, and check the front leg, and that opens my right leg, or my center line for his right leg to come in. See? So I'm exposing my right leg. So here we bring in the principle of what we call a positional check, or a position check. So we have to pretend that the right leg is there to fill that gap and close our center line. So we're not doing a pin now, but it's just in a position to close that off. Again, Rick, when he comes in, that when I move, I have to put my foot down in case he did fall back and this foot comes up, that it would not go into my center line. Okay? Or we think of it as the man being crossed up, or what we call boxer style. Remember, the different ways the opponent can attack. He can be right, meaning right hand and right foot, or left, or he can be crossed up, a left leg against the right hand, or a left hand against the right leg. See? So if he came in boxer style, the left leg forward against the other hand, this leg forward, and this hand, now, see, the position would go where I would have to pin the leg, and I'm working the left side, and now it would be a pinning check again. So this is the position that we're concerned with because of our center line. And that's the position in pinning checks, to keep that, and you always have to think about your lower line. Okay, now, the next technique we'll do will be against a two-hand attempted push or grab, and we'll bring in a different principle now. We're not going to be inside, breaking the height zone, so we're going to bring in a different principle. Now, if Rick is coming in with both hands, like say now, when I move back and hit or strike behind his arm, this is going to cause a rotation because his left leg is forward and he doesn't have a bracing angle, so he has to go with this. So what I did here was cancel his center line. Now what I mean by that is, like we're looking at the cameras, if I come in this way, my center line is directly into the camera, see? Or like my opponent. when this gets to turn and rotates me, I can't really use this hand unless I regain my center line. See, so what we're doing here is canceling the center line to prevent the backup weapon from coming in. But that's like me telling Rick to come in like this and say, no, I said, get in a stance for me. See, so what I did is I basically turned him sideways, and I put your hands up like you're fighting. We're both in a stance. So he's sideways and I'm sideways. So I don't really have a good target selection. I basically, again, put him in a protection stance. So I said, okay, now I'd rather have Rick facing me square again. Then I would have my target availability. But if I brought him square, his backup weapon. So I'm going to apply the principle now of how do I get back to center line and still prevent the backup weapon from coming. So I'm going to break his height zone by my kick to the knee, which is going to break him back and get me some distance and regain my center line for my front kick. So in application, when he comes in, I say, oh no, let's cancel the weapon. And then I'd look at the foot and say, now, what angle do I have to kick on that will rotate and turn him back square to me and break him down so I'd not only break his height zone, but regain the center line. So I look at the leg and I say, okay, I need to kick this way, that opens it up, and then your front kick comes through into the target. A lot of people kick at the leg and don't pay any attention to how they're kicking, and actually can lose the target. So what I mean by this, you do the technique on me, Rick. If I come in like this, and he just kicks square into the leg, this can break me away just because he kicked the knee like the book says, but how and why, and then lost the technique because of the angle of execution, can lose the target. So what we're looking at here is you have to stop and look and say, what angle will rotate me back to square and give him the center line target as well as break me down. So that's the principle in this two-hand push technique. Okay, now that technique was against or outside of an opponent's left arm. Now we'll move it and go outside of a right, but now we're going to make it a kick. Now we're going to go back and change the principle. It's basically the same as the last technique of canceling the center line, but I want to point out something about the block. As we've been working the principle that, remember, you don't just block. You block and cock your hand at the same time, so you don't have the extra move. Remember, we blocked in to cock to strike out, and we blocked out to cock to strike in. So now we're going to do a downward block, but we're not going to do a standard downward block. We're going to do what we call a downward diagonal block, and the reason being to stay with the principle. So I'm going to turn sideways here to show this. So if a person was coming in with a kick and I dropped back and got in a stance and did a standard downward block that basically, so you can see these lines, crosses this line to this line, then my hand is in front of me, and to use it I'll have to recock it to fire the hand, elbow, whatever you wanted to throw. So again, I would have on a standard downward, block 1, and then have to cock it 2 for my move number 3, whatever it was going to be. So if I block on a diagonal, then I say, oh, I didn't just block. In this case, my elbow is the next weapon. If I chambered my hand, you notice the elbow did not move. So it is at its farthest point away to use for the strike. Another, while I'm thinking about it, a common mistake or wrong motion in this type of move is what we call false travel. Now, false travel is motion that you feel is helping you, or you think you're moving something and you're really not. Again, I'll go sideways here to point this out, that if I did my block and then I'm going to do my elbow and I let my hand move and come out, see, if you look at the motion, the elbow is not moving, but the hand is moving a lot. So that's why we want to keep the hand basically on your side. I have a lot of students, they grab a handful of gi and hang on to it, and then when you move, if the hand stays against you, then the elbow has to move, and that's the weapon. So you don't get the false travel feel, and actually that's what it is. There's no travel on the weapon, but you think there is. Now let me bring in Rick here to do the technique. And again, now this is for a right front kick. So again, I'm going to cancel the center line, and the diagonal is doing another thing for me. Is if I did a standard kick, it would make my back leg become a pivot point, and it would not gain the borrowed reach distance that he wants to get. It would just want to spin me around and keep me at distance. But if I use the diagonal, that will give me like a frictional pull and keep me moving forward, and hopefully I won't have to go anywhere to put in my next strike of my elbow. And I'll get to the footwork when we get into that position. So Rick is coming in with a kick, so I'm dropping back and going parry it by and get my hand cocked back. Now, the hand is low, so I want to keep it low and then put my shuffle in with the elbow. Now, the shuffle, other common mistakes on the shuffle is not to use a push drag, as that's our one move, remember. I get a lot of people going with a step drag or a drag step. And we don't use those in the techniques, beginner techniques, because they are an extra beat. They're a 2-beat move, and the strike is always timed on the second strike. So you have a start-stop in your mechanics. So you want to get the one move and have the backup mass working. Now when we do this, it's actually the whole thing is one move. When you step back, you want to feel like you're stepping on a spring that does your push drag forward. So it's not a one, check the time, and then go. We want no and thens in here. We want to keep moving. Now also, we generally have 2 variations on this, with the kick and then the kick punch. And the rule is if the hand's low, keep it low. If the hand is high, keep it high. So we'll go over both of these again. Again, without the punch, he's just coming in with the kick. So I'm dropping back, deflect, check, and elbow in one move. Don't lean away. Then the left kick, the right kick comes in, followed by the punch. And they come in and say, hey, keep it high, and then shuffle in with the strike. Okay. And that's the basic 2 variations on this technique. Again, remember that we're blocking on a diagonal to get the hand not just blocking, but to be cocked. So we don't have our one extra move to cock to hit. And that'll do it on that one. Okay, now that technique was against or outside of an opponent's right leg. Now, we'll move back inside and work inside of a right leg. Now, I want to talk about this a little bit. First of all, this is a technique working this inside downward block that a lot of the schools have taken out and don't realize that if you take it out, you're missing a category completion move. The inside downward block is, like one of the few techniques, or the only technique really, that the block is used in is inside the right leg as your inside downward palm down block. And remember that when we did long one, we stepped up and we showed that as our first extra block to use. So if we show it in the form and then we don't use it in a technique, it's actually missing. See, and again, for category completion, that we just block on a downward diagonal the outside to my right. So I'm going to take and use the other side of the V and block with the inside downward palm down on the opposite side to pick up this principle. Now this gives us our frictional pull and opens our center line now, and because we're back inside, we have to apply the rule of breaking the height zone. So I'm going to bring Rick in now, and when he comes in, remember, he's going to come in and I'm basically going to put him in a horse, and I'm going to be inside of his center line. So I've got to bring in my rule of breaking the height zone. So that's when our kick comes in right away. Now, first of all, when I move, let me do this to show you a common mistake, Rick. Come in with the kick. If I make the block this way and then draw, I want to draw my foot, I get this a lot, to kick, and I'm actually short. And if I can't kick him, the technique is useless. See? So now from this position, just stay there, Rick, to point this out. If I say, I want to kick Rick with my front foot, so I draw to a cat, well, that just creates more distance and shortens the kick more. So I say, well, I want to use a cat, so if I bring my back foot up, then I hit the same position, but now I gained my ground. So when we do this technique, we don't want to what we call outdistance ourselves. So if I step way back, and then I can't pick up this foot unless I shift some weight, and that's going to draw me out farther and move me away. So when we step, I want to basically hit this position. So the amount of distance that I drug my left foot up is where I want to step in the first place. In other words, when I step back and spin, I'm going to be basically in a reverse cat, like here, and not back here at distance. So we call short step. So when you pivot, the foot is cocked already, again, where I wouldn't have to draw to position or draw to position, it's there to begin with. So the spin is used for the block. It's also used to put in the kick. So when I finish spinning, we don't want our and then. So I don't want to go spin, see if it's time to kick yet, and then kick. The rotation of the block is also actually used for the kick. So from that point, well, I'll take it up to that point and then bring in another extra move to cure a problem. So when he's coming in with the 2 steps to get to the kick, when I spin, the foot is in. And then when my foot hits the ground, a common mistake here is people just back in, and if you missed, the man is on your back. And we have a rule in our system, one of the other principles is don't turn your back. I don't want him on my back. So we add a move here to prevent that from happening, and that's the back knuckle to rotate us back into center line. So again, when the kick comes in, we're stepping back, and the kick goes in, we plant, and then pivot back to neutral to put him in front of me, see, not have him still behind me with nothing going on. So the back knuckle comes in, then I adjust accordingly, kick out the supporting leg, and then cover out. Okay, so let's do the whole thing smoothly in application. The kick's coming in, so oh, here comes the kick. Kick, back knuckle, drag, kick, and out. And that's it for that one. Okay, now that technique, again, was against inside, or being where we were working, it was inside the right leg. Now we're going to work inside the right leg again, or in the center line with a club technique. And this is really shown, or should be done, as what we call a change-up technique. Now what I mean by that is, Rick, come in here. Give me that stick. Okay. What the person's doing, like, don't move, Rick. I'm coming in and trying to hit him in the top of the head. And I'm going to work away from him. So when I come in and I miss this shot because he moved, then I'm going to say, oh, yeah, well, then come in on a different line. And that's what the technique is taught against. It's really not done for an overhead attack. That's your initial move, but because you move and evade it, the person changes it to a roundhouse. Remember, nobody will do, I do this to be funny a lot, I just evade this, Rick. I say, I'm coming in to hit him, and he says, oh man, I missed. I'll try again tomorrow. See, that will never happen. The follow-up move will be there, guaranteed. See, so when you evade, you missed him with this one, he will come in with this one or something else. So this is the move that we're looking at. So the same principles apply. Okay, come on in with that, Rick. See, I says, I got out of the way. I'm in the center line, so this move will be there unless I prevent it. So our center line rule comes in. When you're in the center line, you have to break the height zone. So our kick comes in right away. A common mistake people do in this technique is wait for the roundhouse. So they'll go 1, 2, and get it coming, and then start moving. So you're breaking that rule of the inside. You don't want the backup weapon to come in, so the kick comes to prevent that. So we'll do it without the backup weapon coming in, and then we'll do it with the weapon coming in, and we do that just to make the people or the students grab and check and hang on. So in application, when he comes in, we come off, we get the kick in, and we rotate into our twist, and then we kick the knee, and then plant with the back knuckle, and then we can get out. Now, again, to have the club come in to make us check it. And one of the reasons we do this, too, is to teach the oppose the line rule. So what I mean by this is swing down. If we have a vertical line here, see, then, let me use this for the camera. If we have a vertical line here, I can't match that line. I have to oppose it with a horizontal. And if I have a horizontal line coming in, I don't want to match it. I have to oppose it with a vertical. See, so this is what we call oppose the line rule. So it's common, slow motion, Rick, when I come off over here and watch this come in on the roundhouse, going into the roundhouse, the people start reaching for it. And when you reach for it, you match an angle. I have a horizontal to a horizontal, and I can get my thumb broken or totally miss the grab and get hit because I didn't have any margin for error. Remember, the horizontal line is changed to a vertical. Now it opposes this line, and you have your margin for error put in. So now we'll have the shot come in, slow motion. When he's coming in, we come off, we make our kick, but here comes the roundhouse sometime. I grab it, make my kick, and then the back knuckle in. Okay, Remember, that has to come in right away. He didn't really want to throw it there because the kick was in, but I tried to make him throw that just to have us catch it. Let's do that one more time, Rick. So you go round and around. See? When you're coming in, and go, there it is. Then the shot comes in, right? See? Okay, and that's the basic principle for that technique. Now again, that technique was inside of a right roundhouse club attack. And remember, to bring in that inside rule, to break the height zone, don't wait for the roundhouse to come in. If it does, you'll get hit and hurt. Okay, now let's move back outside of a right punch. This brings in something we did earlier, like when we closed the center line, and then we opened it with our foot, and that was on our push, two-hand push technique. Now we're going to close the center line with our hand, and this is the opposite side if you're looking at it. Instead of being outside the left, now we're outside the right to pick up the rotation opposite. And we're going to open the center line not with our foot but with our hand and work the same principle and change the depth zone to push him back out of hand range where you're not going to be hit. So now the punch is coming in, we're moving outside, and I close the center line. Remember, this is just like saying I turn sideways and get in a fighting stance. That's what I did. See, so I don't want him here. So I want to turn him back in. Now remember, if I just hooked his arm this way, that's going to bring in that backup weapon, which we don't want to have happen because he's still at hand range. See, the hand can easily reach. See, so I want to change his hand range where I don't have any danger with that and break him back into kick range. And now I'm going to do it with my hand. So from the block position, I'm going to punch to the ribs. Now, first of all, again, remember when we kicked the knee, we said, what angle do we have to kick the knee on to get the center line reestablished and break his height zone? So now it's the same thing. I say, what angle do I have to punch on to move him back into kick range and rotate him to regain the center line? This is what we're trying to do here. So the angle, and I hit it. So, okay, let's move him back. And then I'm going to make my hand stay where it was and catch his arm so I can have both hands opposed and my pull kick, where I pull, kick, and then land with my Meredith gravity and my knee check with my diagonal punch to the ribs. And this is fitting. And the angle of the ribs runs down this way, so we match it. We don't straight punch. We get it with a diagonal to match the angle of the ribs. Okay. Let's do that one more time. Again, when he comes in, we close the center line, move him back into range that we're going to work the kick from as you make your counter grab, your pull kick, and then you land with your punch in the ribs. Okay, now, the pull, we want to have both hands opposing. It's just like when we punch, one equals the other, or the weight and the balance of the other. One hand coming back doesn't really match the leg. So here we have both hands come out. So when we grab, we say pull, kick, and cock. So I'm not only pulling and kicking, but my left hand is cocking. So I have both hands working reverse against the leg going in. And that's what balances out on that technique. Okay, now that was basically how to do the technique. Now, there's another part of the technique that a lot of people have trouble with, and that's missing the grab. And what that accounts for that is what we call the donut versus the donut hole. So when Rick comes in with a punch, a lot of people, just don't move yet, Rick. When the punch comes in, they'll start circling the arm. And remember, the punch, now he's going to move back. The punch is to move him back. And when I start circling the arm, you're not trying to grab. See, it's like going around the donut and he's in the donut hole. So I'm really, when you're busy circling, you're not trying to grab. So there's a lot of systems that do this. Like you'll see motion from like this and then do this. This is, hey, stay on the outside where you're at and grab. Don't try to circle and grab. So that's the principle we want to work. Let's do it from this side, Rick, so you can see the hand. So when the punch comes in, when the punch happens, you keep your hand outside and you're basically putting the chopping part of your hand to the arm, and then as he moves back you just roll and your catch is there. So you stay in contact with the arm. Again, when this happens, the punch goes and we stay in contact to grab. Don't hit and start circling and you miss the grab. That's a common problem with that technique. Okay, so remember that donut hole principle. Don't be circling the arm when you're trying to grab. Stay in contact. Okay, now let's do a technique that takes a principal center line again and change it. We worked on a two-hand push, dropping away. Now we're going to go to a two-hand grab, pull in. So a lot of times our principle will change when we move in, and it's based on timing. In other words, if I'm going to move away, I have to establish my base and then hit. So the and then has to come in. But when I move forward, I can hit with this motion because I'm using either backup mass or marriage with gravity. Basically here, moving forward is going to be backup mass. To point that out, again, like from sideways so you can see this, if I'm going to retreat, like I have to shuffle, if I shuffle back and then I can hit no matter how I do it, it has to come as a second move. So base comes and then the strike would come to prevent the moving away from the strike. But going forward, see, wham, your weight is moving with you, whatever, and it can be one move, again, using the backup mass principle. So that's what we're going to do now. Now, this is a marriage with gravity technique, and it's based for a two-hand grab pull-in. So we're using the borrowed force in the technique. So when we do this, the opponent's right foot is one of our targets, and we step in, we stomp the foot. And this sets our marriage with gravity as really there's two strikes going down. The foot is going down and the hand is going down. And we have to feel this force coming forward. So I'm going to bring Rick in now and show you how we train and when we exercise this technique. Okay, now remember when we do this technique, it's a marriage with gravity technique. So when the person's foot, right leg is generally forward, we're using our step in to stomp that foot. As again, we're emphasizing marriage with gravity, so when I step in, I'm going boom, and stomping on that foot. If Rick's foot was in there and I had to step forward and he's my buddy, I don't want to stomp on his foot, so I hold my weight back and I don't get the feel and the technique I'm looking for. So I want to have that weight in there. So when we train, when we do the technique for practice, we have him put his right leg back, and then again we pretend it's there. So this lets us set our weight. So when I move in, I say, okay, that was on your foot, Rick. See, and then we get our weight forward in the technique. So remember, that is one of our targets when we're using the compounding on the principle here. So he's going to keep his right foot back. And the grab and the pull in, this is a borrowed force technique. We're using the force of him pulling to help hit. See, so when the person reaches up and grabs, I'm going to pin the hands, step in and stomp the foot, and strike the temple, across the eye and nose, and down on the arms to break his height zone. Now let me point something out here before we do this. For the camera, a common mistake here is to reverse a line. It's cock the hand back and then go forward as a hit. So that is making our cock as a separate move before we move. So we want to work around the circle and just make it one basic move of getting to the move as quick as possible down, not to go back and then forward. We want that to happen together again. So we got a microphone here, so we're moving slowly. When he starts to pull, I'm stepping in, pinning and breaking and going, oh, and breaking the height zone is one move. Then I'm going to loop the elbow out and catch him across the jaw, and then cock my elbow back this way as far as I can get it for travel, and then put my push drag in with the elbow, and that's the end of the base move. I could let him go, and he would move back. One of the principles again here is this is one unbroken move. So I'm watching it in the camera without an opponent there from being in position. We're striking, breaking the height zone down, continuing to the elbow, cock, and then right back in with the elbow without stopping. So watching from the side, we're going and one-handed. We break the height zone from the strike, loop the elbow, and then push drag the shot in. And that should do it for that technique. Okay, I'm going to stop right there with as far as the yellow belt material goes. Again, I didn't cover all the techniques that's taught in all the schools because, again, it is different just about in every school I go into, but this covers quite a few of the standard techniques with the rule and principle that goes along with them. Now, I want to step this up and go into some advanced material and talk about what we call family groupings or family or related techniques. Most of the schools you walk into, a lot of students get baffled. They see all these lists on the wall of what they see, a few hundred techniques. And we keep telling the people all the time that, remember, there's not really a couple hundred techniques. There's what we call a handful of base moves and a whole bunch of variations to them. We'll do a technique or the same series of moves or set of moves like for one thing, and then change it and give it a different name, and a lot of students don't realize or see that it's the same thing. I'll give you an example of this. Let me call Jay in here to be a mugger. We'll take a technique like for a roundhouse club or a punch. So what I'm going to work is I'm going to step in to a right neutral and work a combination block and strike at the same time. Then I'm going to establish my center line, open up, put in my rear hand punch, and then come back with my front hand back knuckle. So as he comes in, the roundhouse, I come in, I go 1, open the center line, 2, and then back in with the back knuckle and my check. So my motion again is 1, 2, 3. Comes in with a roundhouse kick, and I go in, I go 1, 2, 3, and really it's the same thing with an insert move. So the only difference, that's okay, the only difference is here is 1, extended outward block with my punch, and then 2, 3, and now I go downward block for the leg, and then 2, 3. See, so it is the same technique, just one time we do it for a punch, next time we did it for a kick. But basically it's the same move. And this is sort of an idea of what a family is. A family is a series of techniques that starts off the same base move. And we'll get into that now. Okay, so now I want to get into a series of techniques that use the same principal moves or the same motion to handle different situations. There's another Kenpo saying that many answers lie in a single move, or we can say technique. I'm going to call this, to give it a name, we'll call it the crane family, okay, now, because we're working from a crane position. Now, I want to point out something as far as a principle in this with the lines on the floor. We'll use this cross line, or the 3-9 line, as to represent my position forward or back. What we do in this technique is we'll move off and stay on the line, see, or I can move up slightly and come above the line, but the principle in this set of moves is not to drop back and lose distance away from the line, as we'll pick up a bad line of entry or angle of entry for that. So remember, we want to stay where we're at on the line or come slightly above the line, and that again is reading or gauging where do I need to be to have this happen. See? So we're working here now with the insert move, so I'm going to call Jay in again, and we're having, again, that we learned in our beginner moves that we don't want to just block, we want to also cock our hand. So if we don't just block to cock our hand, we can also, what else can we do? We can strike. So now if the right punch comes in, see, I can take my hand as I make my parry, and I want to take my right hand and cock it to my left side because I'm going to use a low line strike. Well, I have to take that hand across myself anyway, so we use the what we call a chopping knuckle raker to the elbow or the bicep. And again, this is just what we call taking advantage of cocking your hand. If we have to cock it, make it do something at the same time. So now I'm ready for my low line strike. So now let's work on a little bit of angle this way. When he comes in, I'm going to step off and go to my crane stance. This is cocking my leg for the kick. But again, I don't want to do that as a 1-2. I want to do it as one move, so there's a lot going on in this technique. In one move is what I'm really going to do is leap into a crane stance by picking both feet up at the same time instead of going 1-2. When my foot gets there, we're on 1 to the position. So with that foot move, so comes the hand move to go with it. So there's really 4 things going on in the same move. Now, when he comes in again, I want to point out the position. When I come here, what I did was move to his side, and I'm at his side, and it's basically like we're both in stances again. He is covered. What I'm trying to establish here is a center line, line of entry where I have targets. In other words, like if we were fighting, I'll say, okay, stand in a horse. See, now I say, okay, this is the way I want to be because I have the center line, or turn around in a horse, and now I have that center line from behind. but I don't want the person, come back sideways, to be in a stance, basically ready to fight and covered. So that's the purpose now of the kick, is to regain the center line from the rear. So a little angle here, right? When he comes in and we move off, I say, okay, the kick is to rotate, and now I have the center line of entry, and he's not sideways to me anymore. So when I kicked him down, I said, okay, now I'm going to land with the back knuckle to the left kidney. Now this is not designed to kill the person. It's a stinger. It's the guy, yay, that hurts. And it makes him arch his back and bring his head to me to present the target that I'm really looking for. So when this shot comes into the kidney, it says, okay, here comes the head back. Yes, it's coming. And then the elbow comes in as your major shot. So you could be, when you kick him down, he could be slightly wanting to fall forward. Now, if he gets too far past what we call a point of no return, this won't bring him back up. I'd have to go into like a different technique to cover that situation. But if he's just a little bit forward, this shot's going to bring him back up because of that nerve reaction and present the shot to the elbow. So let's do that one more time in completion. When he comes off, we set, kick, and then put the shot in as the end of the base move. Okay, now what I'm going to do is just repeat that series of moves, but change what we call the major strike. Now you'll notice in the technique, Jay, let me bring you in here again. Just go to punch position. In punch position. Okay, when we work here, we have a high shot, a middle shot, and a low. And this is another one of the principles of the system as we strike the diversified zones. We never strike the same zone twice. So what I did here is when I moved off, just stay there, Jay. When I moved off, I said, okay, I'm going to stay up, but I want to break my opponent down. So I start at the bottom. So I came to position, I said, let's strike the low zone, then go to the middle zone, and then go to the high zone. So we went low, middle, high, and I dropped my opponent. Now I'm going to switch that principle, do exactly the same move, but I'm going to leave him high and drop myself. See, so now when the shot comes in, I'm coming off and going the high zone first. That will make him hold where it hurts. Then draw out, put in my middle zone shot, then drop myself through the low zone, and then come in for my takedown, by dropping myself and leaving him high. So I just reversed the strikes and the principles of the last technique. Okay, now I'm going to do again the same set of moves, but change what the attack is, and also point out that where we are, come back in here, Jay. When he came in with the right leg in the first technique, I went to my crane stance because I'm using the leg, and it's cocked to kick. In the second move, I didn't use the crane stance, but I used the same position of the inverted 7 around. So when he came in on the second technique, I went to the cat position, which is the same as the crane, but no crane again because I'm not using it, and then I walked in my high shot as my major. So that's the shot that we're trying to emphasize now. See, in the first technique, we set the height zone, so when it came off, kicked him down, it's okay, bam, and the low back knuckle was our major shot, and then into the elbow. Then the next technique, we went, okay, bam, the high zone major shot, and then into the elbow. So now we go and change, and we've left out the elbow, we went the high and the low, so we go back now and let's emphasize the elbow as the major shot and work outside with the same angles. So now when the shot comes in, give me the commitment move now. See? So when we come in and we're moving off, I'm going to slide in and I'm going to make a chop to the ribs, but I'm going to do that as I'm moving forward and then collapse it into my elbow. So I'm going to move forward in one step, but I'm going to put in 2 strikes. So like one of the common mistakes in the technique is to step out totally with the chop and then just collapse the elbow, see? Or make it off timing one way or another. There's many ways you can do it. What we want to have is the step in be the backup mass for the elbow. So again, the chop has to come in transition or moving forward. So we'll do this again when he comes in. I'm moving off, okay, and then the set with the elbow when the shot goes in. Now, I have a rear line of entry here, and this gives me any of the takedowns that you might want to use. And this is, again, we have two variations on this technique, whether we enter from the rear or from the front. The difference being what we call the commitment in the punch. Like if I was attacking Jay and I stepped in like this sideways and he moves off angle, you will always have a rear line of entry. But if I'm going to be a fighter and come in open, ready to throw both hands, then he's going to have a front line of entry, and then we work in front of the knee. So let's see if we can pick up that one now. So when he comes in, again we move off, and I go, and now I'm in the front line. So there's where I put my open up and my scoop out to leave as a few extra moves of the technique because they're there. Now we have the rear ones too. Let's go back to the rear one. See, when he comes in and you go in here, we still have your different moves you do from the rear. So where you want to stop, it's really up to you. What we're showing is these positions, when no matter what, they are the same set of moves done for different things. Okay, now I'd like to do the same series of techniques again, but now I'll work it against a kick. So what I'm going to do here, being kick is long range, you notice that we work from here. Come back in, Jay. When he punches, we stayed, just come in with the punch, that we stayed at punch range where whenever I moved, I could hit him from where I was at because of the reach of the arm. If he can hit me with his arm, I can hit him with his arm, basically. Now, when he comes in with a kick, a long-range weapon, then there's going to be an extra move or extra beat or a beat lost in here that hopefully is not lost without filling the gap. So I'm in this position. I want you to adjust this. If you can notice in the position here, I'm starting in the middle of the X, if you can see the X on the floor. So again, come back in with the punch again. See, from here, so from this angle, remember I stayed and moved up, and where I worked all my lines from the middle of the X, whatever I did. So now, this is basically what we call a fighting technique, where I'm already in a stance. Again, come back out. Oh, you're going to work it from there? That's fine. Just make reach, remember. Now, I'm in the middle of the intersection, so now, when the kick comes in, go ahead and bring your kick in. So, whoa! And you notice that I shuffled back away from the intersection. So, I want to be back in the middle of the intersection to work the technique. So when I made my block, I'm going to come back and do my crossover and add my insert move to get my hand cocked. And now I'm basically back in the middle of the intersection to work my kick down on either leg, then the back knuckle through, and make my hook and heel palm. And that's the end of the base move, but I follow this circle and continue to the elbow because that's what completes the series of moves. As far as what we call the crane family, as you remember, it ended with the elbow in the other sets of moves. So we want to end here. We can take it into the different extension moves that you want to do. So let's do that move again one more time. We're already fighting. The kick comes in, you set the angle, make the cross in, kick either leg that you need. The back knuckle goes through the head, the rip to the elbow, change, strike, and finish him off with that. And that's enough of the techniques to see what we're talking about when we talk about a family of techniques or a family grouping. There are many other techniques that belong in here too, but we'll save those for later tapes. So that's going to wrap it up for this tape, and I hope you learned a little something out of it.